Awesome. Well, thank you all for sharing so much. I think with that, we can move on to the next text type. I'm going to share my screen again. There we go. So we're going to try a new genre of writing, and this one has a variety of terms from it. Maybe persuasive writing in the Common Core, but when you break it down, it becomes opinion and argument. Argument makes the connection to science in a way that the terms persuasive and opinion don't do as much. So the framers of the Common Core thought that writing genuine arguments was too complex for primary students, so they suggested that writing opinions are a step towards that goal. However, the framers of the NGSS firmly believe that primary students can and should engage in genuine arguments. So we are using the term arguments today, but if you'd like a little bit more information about the distinction between the two terms, Andrew's put a document in the chat box, and that just further breaks down kind of why they move from opinion to argument in the Common Core standards. So we just wanted to mention that. So earlier in our observations, the question came up, what foods do snails eat? And so that's something we are going to investigate together today. So we have several different food options that we'll show you in a moment. They include dairy, leafy greens, fruits, vegetables, bread, meat, all sorts of things. But before we choose our foods and investigate, it's important to know what type of evidence or data we are going to be looking for in order to make an argument. So with students, we engage them in a conversation about what to look for by biting into an apple. And then we asked, what evidence do you have that the teacher is eating? And they said things like, oh, your mouth is moving and we can see bite marks on the apple. So we use that as a way to help students understand what actually was going to count as their evidence or data. So that's what we're going to be looking for in our investigation today is some mouth movement or some bite marks. And we'll be able to see those after a little while. I'm going to stop my share again so we can see the food options. Andrew, will you spotlight Fred's camera again? Thank you. Perfect. So let's go ahead and choose our foods first, though, and then we can start observing and see if we can see any of this evidence. So again, just using the chat box, what are things you would like to try? What are some of the foods you would like to see tested? And go ahead and drop those in the chat box. Hot Cheetos. Yes, it'd probably be helpful for me to describe what those are. So there's yogurt up top, a Kit Kat, lettuce, bread, pasta, carrots, apples, hot dog, and Cheetos. So Fred, maybe for the first plate, let's try Cheetos, lettuce, pasta, and yogurt.
Cheetos.
Mm-hmm. And then lettuce, pasta, and yogurt for that first plate. And then we'll get to some of the others as well. And again, thank you for the questions about the well-being of our snails. The hot Cheetos we've used many times and know they do not hurt the snail, but again, appreciate the asking.
Anything that we can eat is going to be good, safe, and wanted by them.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see.
Great. Thank you, Fred. That looks like a great first plate.
We have some questions.
Oh yeah.
They want to know how often do they eat and do they have a sense of smell?
Yes, they have a sense of smell.
Yes, and snails, Fred, tell me if I'm wrong here. It seems that they can always eat, but really they can also go weeks without eating as well. They end up, kind of eating a lot and then almost like hibernating for a little while and not needing food for weeks. Anything to add to that? Yeah.
Well, just that's one of the things that makes them such a wonderful classroom animal is they take such little care. Once you stop feeding them and put the lid on their terrarium, they just go to sleep against the wall and will stay alive for over a year like that. But
Mhm.
then when you wake them up by spraying them with water and put some food in front of them, they're ready to go.
Mhm. Great. Thank you. And so, yeah, let's take a look. Do we have evidence that they're eating here? Is there any data that we can start collecting? That's a great view, Fred. Um, and and drop that in the chat box if you're seeing some evidence or some data here. Yeah, we see the head moving here. From Cheryl, I agree. It's interesting that they're each eating from something different and not switching yet. Looks like they are moving mouth in and out. Yeah, the mouth seems to be going in and out there. I see the lettuce moving as it is eating. That's great. Fred, that's a great view. Are you able to hear them at all?
No, not yet.
Mhm. The pasta is moving. That's great. Yeah, so some really we've got some preliminary evidence here. And actually what we'll do is we'll go ahead and put this plate to the side and we'll come back to it to see if we can find any further evidence. And there was some other requests for trying out a hot dog, like a meat product, and maybe a Kit Kat, and maybe even the bread. So and an apple. Let's try the apple too. So we'll try a second plate and see what evidence we can collect there. Great. So we've got perfect. The pasta, I believe, is cooked. Is that right, Fred?
Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm. And Henry, that's a good question. What is the range of their sense of smell? I don't know. Do you know, Fred?
I think it's probably millimeters or less.
Mm.
But it's a great question, and you wouldn't know this unless you read about it or really watched them for a long time, but it's their bottom antenna that are their smelling parts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, some really nice questions in the chat box as well. They will eat other things not edible to humans, like they will eat cardboard or paper. Not sure if they know when to stop. Good question. And Debbie, yeah, do they just go to the closest food choice or actually pass by something to get what they really want? That is a really good question and something that by doing multiple investigations or multiple observations like that, I think you could begin to answer that question because we've seen cases where they've kind of abandoned one food to go to another. Yeah, so good questions. Where's the mouth exactly? So we didn't zoom in on this in our initial observation, but you certainly could doing it with students because that's something we actually focused on in the classroom as well. We felt it was important for them to know where the mouth was. And it's right on the underside of their foot at the top there. And yes, they definitely pass waste after they eat. Your terrarium will be full of it. So any evidence we have here of the snails eating any particular foods? Any evidence? Do you think we could zoom in a tiny bit, Fred, on any of, yeah, there we go.
I'm going to go back to the other plate because there's
Perfect.
also an option,
Ah,
something going on with the one with the Cheetos. It's just boring its way into it.
mm.
Pull the one off of the lettuce just to see if you can see.
Yeah, so do we see any evidence or data that the snail has eaten the lettuce? And drop that in the chat box if you see something, that would be great.
With the pasta.
Yeah, so thanks, Danielle. Noticeable bite marks from the lettuce. And yeah, what about the pasta, Fred?
I'm seeing the same thing to see if there's bite marks there.
Mm.
one just hasn't left the carrot yet. And it's
Interesting.
hard to pull them off yet, but when we do, we would be able to see if there's any chunks missing.
Great. Ooh. Yeah, Fred, some interesting questions in the chat box too that I'm thinking through. Does the waste color change according to the food eaten? I notice a slight difference, but not like if they eat a bunch of carrots, it's not like it's orange or something like that.
It is actually.
Is it?
It's,
When I feed them carrots, I've never seen it as, well, maybe I have actually.
and kids really, get a kick out of that.
That's awesome. And do snails have teeth? Fred, are they called teeth?
They got a fancy name, and
Okay.
say that they have a tooth. They have a thing that looks very much like a chainsaw called a radula, and it's this kind of scrapey object that they use to scrape things into their mouth.
That's what it's called. Thank you, the radula. And we've got a question can we use the hand lens to get closer?
Yes.
That would be great.
Let me
Let's see if we can find any other evidence. Interesting.
Yeah, it's hard to see.
Mhm.
This guy. And I'm going to try to make it so it's a little brighter. There we go.
That's great. Thank you, Fred. Awesome. And we can always revisit these plates a little bit later once they've had a little bit of time. But I am going to pause us for a moment here and ask us to construct some arguments about what food snails eat using the evidence that we have available right now. So again, doing this online, we're only working with one set of snails and plate of food, but you could do this multiple times to continue collecting evidence in order to feel comfortable answering the question. But for now, yeah, what arguments do we have about what foods do snails eat and what's the evidence for it? Great, Diana's got something in the chat box. They appear to eat anything and everything. Yes, and do we have evidence that supports that? From Juanita, snails appear to be omnivores. They eat the same things as people. Yeah, some great claims here. Yeah, what evidence have we been able to collect to support these claims? Mm-hmm.
Can you see that? It looks like it's eaten the spice off of the Cheeto.
That is awesome. Thanks, Fred. Yeah, and we've got some other evidence statements here too. Nothing was left without eating. They ate the hot Cheeto. And based on what you just showed us, Fred, I mean, we see the spice eaten off. Yeah. Appear to be omnivores, and the evidence for that is they ate the hot dog, the bread, and the lettuce. So great.
But that one's cutting a swath through the pasta.
Wow. They eat the spice off like the kids do. Yes.
Just like the...
Great. Any other arguments that we'd like to share in the chat box that includes some evidence as well? Oh, and from Maria, can we check if pieces of meat are missing from the hot dog? Interesting. Does it look, is it totally whole?
Let's see if I can get the hand lens on there. Oh. When I move right, it moves left.
Yeah.
There it is.
Huh. Can you see any chunks taken out of the hot dog, Fred?
I see what can, it's on the top of the screen and it looks like there's little nibble marks around the top edge of the hot dog.
Interesting.
It's not like big holes like in the lettuce, but
Mm-hmm.
little nibble marks.
Great. Thank you. Okay, awesome. Yeah, so we've gotten a couple of arguments in the chat box. We've got some evidence here. And again, should you have time to do this multiple times, you'll have even more evidence to support some of the claims that are coming up. So really, really nice. Thank you so much, Fred. I think we can cancel our spotlight for now, and maybe we'll come back to the plate of food and see if there's any more evidence here. We wanted to quickly have another conversation just about the usefulness of doing a science activity and then writing about it, and how that lends itself to writing opinions or arguments. And then also how would we support our TK to 2 students in writing opinions and arguments. So let's go ahead and do that in the chat box as well. We can also, I'm realizing, if people are now very familiar with Zoom, people probably know how to use the raise hand function. So we could also use that if someone would like to share out loud. I'll pull that up. So yeah, any thoughts about using science to write opinions or arguments, and how we might support our TK to 2 students in doing that? Yeah, just like real scientists, they make those observations and then they write their arguments based on the evidence. Yes, from Yami, it makes my writing so much more fun. I'm engaged in the snail and I want to write about it. I can begin to make an argument because I can point to my observations. Great. Yeah, that's great. From Alyssa, we might provide our students sentence stems. Is it Lisa? Awesome. And Maria just shared a matrix to connect Common Core standards and ELA. Oop, pulling that up. Oh, good. It's the one we shared. They would be excited and want to share. I can prove my hypothesis based on the evidence I collect. Oh, great. And Jill has a TK next to her, and he is loving these snails. He has lots to say. That is awesome. Oh, good. Wonderful. Any last couple comments about using a science activity for writing opinions and arguments, and how we might support our students to do that? Yes. We ourselves have some evidence here that our real life students are finding this engaging. That's great. Oh, I like that, Ashley. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that? Or do you want me to read it?
Yeah, so my first grader was in here because I was showing him just, again, I have boys, so poop, And so when Fred started talking about the radula, it made sense. And he's like, oh, it's like a saw and he's going like this. And so he understood because he could see what was happening and the vocabulary word was thrown in as it was happening. So it made sense to him.
That is awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Great. All right. I think we'll let Ashley have the last word there. Yeah, sentence frames I also think would be super useful. That's great. Okay, well, we just wanted to point out that we've got several different resources that we'll make sure are available, including the slides. We also have units written at K and 3 actually. And although they were written before the NGSS, they still have many great student-centered investigations that could be used as a springboard for thinking about how you might do this in your own classrooms. Also, that Snail source and care document we were talking about, and materials and a recording from a previous webinar on helping young students analyze data using Snails.